Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar, British Empire Medal in the Covid Foodbank, a conversation with Sheena Hales. If you have any questions during this webinar, please submit these using the Q&A function, and we will have time allocated to answer these towards the end. I will now pass you over to our moderator for this session, Rory McIntyre, Chairperson of the Edinburgh Lothians Fife District Centre. Over to you, Rory.
Thank you very much, Heather, and good evening, everyone, to this event being run by the Edinburgh Lothians and Fife District Centre of the Chartered Banker Institute. I'm Rory McIntyre of NatWest Group, and I'm also chair of our local district centres committee. Thanks to you all for joining us this evening on International Women's Day, and I am delighted to welcome Sheena Hales of NatWest Group along tonight to discuss her inspiring story of turning NatWest Gogarburn Conference Centre into a food bank during the start of the COVID pandemic. Just to set the scene, as the pandemic gripped the world, Sheena decided it was more that NatWest could do to support the local community. She called upon her experience working in the community engagement roles and also running her own business with underprivileged areas to get plans in motion. Now, I won't spoil the rest of the evening by talking about the subsequent journey, but the resulting temporary food bank at the Gogarburn Conference Centre in Edinburgh provided an average of over 6,000 meals a week during the height of the pandemic, and other donations including 220,000 items of clothing and 140,000 children's books, which is absolutely amazing. The success of this gained national media attention and resulted in Sheena being awarded the prestigious British Empire Medal for her hard work, and we're delighted to have her along this evening to share her story with us. So I suppose we'll get started. Good evening, Sheena. Thank you so much for spending this Tuesday evening with us to tell your inspiring story. So welcome.
Thank you, Rory. Delighted to be here, and absolutely it's an honour to be here on International Women's Day, but I'm just also really grateful to be able to connect and share my story. And I think as well it's important for me to say it's not just a story of me, it's all the volunteers and all the people that made this medal possible, so really excited.
Fab, Sheena. So I suppose we'll maybe just get started at the beginning, as they said, and so how did it come about? How did the ask happen, and where did the journey start for you?
So where it started was I was away on a retreat with Remarkable Women, which is an amazing leadership programme started in Edinburgh, and it was a closed event in the sense there was no media, so we didn't have access to the news or our phones. And during that weekend, what I focused on was who I wanted to become. And really that was around being much more authentically me. And wasn't quite sure what that meant, but I wanted to be more just have more self-expression, connect more, and have much more impact, I suppose, in the community. Key thing for me was about learning to be in service. And so I left the retreat and then came out to the news that actually things had gone completely nuts in terms of COVID. And the restrictions, the lockdowns were happening. And so I guess be careful what you wish for, because within 24 hours of me thinking I wanted to have mass impact or to be involved in something that would make a difference, I received a call. And I think the important thing about that call was that I was ready to hear it. Sometimes when you're asked about something and you dismiss it, whereas at this point I was ready to listen. And what that call was an organisation called Social Bite. It's a cafe sort of network in Edinburgh that is focused on homelessness and supporting homeless people to move into permanent accommodation and to change their lives. And they'd contacted me through some previous work I'd done and said, we think that the community centres are going to close, our cafes are going to close, we think the schools are going to close, and we think if these things happen, there is going to be a mass need for emergency food, and we just do not have the logistics and storage to sort it. So I got that text and I was at work, and it was at lunchtime, and it was just through a WhatsApp chat. but I was ready to do something different, I guess. And I think at that point, I'm just trying to think really how I felt at that point. It was that I cared enough to get a no. I cared enough to ask for something and be told it's not possible. And I knew that who I asked was really important. So I decided to ask, in our organisation, it's Simon McNamara, who reports into Alison Rose. And I penned a really quick email, which actually one of my team helped me to just finish off just in a chat. So it was, if you think normally if you were sending a sort of a big request to one of your very senior leaders, you'd spend more than 10 minutes doing it. But I didn't. It was a simple request without any justification or validation. It was, I think that we need to open our conference centre, staff it, and get our marketing team behind opening a mass distribution centre for the charities. And I need it to happen tomorrow. And now I'd love to go back and dig out that email, because it sounds in itself, you know, sort of very ballsy to ask that, I guess. But within 20 minutes, that had been tabled at an executive meeting. And I later discovered that Alison Rose she had already seen it in those 20 minutes. And she said, why wouldn't we? And I think that's phenomenal, with all the things that were going on with COVID, to actually have a request from, you know, one colleague within the organisation that got accelerated to such a point at that time. So within an hour, I got a call back to say, the conference centre will be open tomorrow. You will get a call from the team who will be supporting it, and the marketing team will be in touch with you. And it was just boom. Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So, you know, terrifying, if I'm honest, and also exciting. But it happened very quickly.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. And it just goes to show that you asked the right person. You know, when the country is in a state of frenzy, then real change can happen by just, to use your word, if you're ballsy about it and put yourself further forward. So yeah, fantastic, and well done you for taking that step. And obviously what happened next was obviously fantastic. But before we move on to that and the outcome of it, I imagine that there was probably quite a lot of kind of an uncomfortable space in getting it stood up. And I know it wouldn't just happen overnight. As much as you got it started, you had access the next day. So what was it like at the start of the journey when you had to go ahead, and what was the resistance like, and any barriers that you had to overcome to get things going?
Rory, I guess it was scary. You know, I wanted to be credible, and I wanted to look like I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't, you know, so that's the honest truth. I knew some of the elements, I had some of the connections, but we were all operating in completely new territory. You know, at the time that we were asking colleagues to stay home and be safe, I'm asking, can we open our buildings, put volunteers in it, and get the public dropping off stuff? And so it was just that, you know, our health and safety team, our property team, we were all treading on sort of new ways of working. So it took a lot of bravery from a lot of people to make decisions that they didn't know fully the outcome. And I think during some of that time, I did feel really lonely. You know, I felt, is this my crusade? Is this going to work? Is this the right thing to do? Should somebody else be doing it? I remember attending an event a year ago that I noticed Naomi's on this call, that she organised in NatWest, and the word stood out for me at that event was, I'm just trying to think the exact words. It is, if it's not me, then who? And if it's not now, then when? And that stood really strong for me during that time, because I thought I could back away from this and I could not do it. But I really stood strong at the fact that I'm going to push through this. I think we will make a difference. But I think it's really important to know, you know, for me, that I had some really golden people around me. You know, some people that were outstanding. You know, they were able to have my back. They were able to push me forward. They were able to allow me to be really vulnerable, because, you know, sometimes I didn't feel like I was doing a good job and I didn't understand what to do. And I did have people and coaches and individuals, and I think that's really important. If you don't have a coach, you should have one, because I was able to be really vulnerable with that coach and actually show my fear, put down my armour, and actually step into, okay, let's be curious, what's happening here? Why am I reacting? What's triggering me? What could I do differently? So there was a massive amount of learning for me in stepping out. All of a sudden, I went from communicating with sort of senior middle managers to communicating with the executive team on a regular basis. I didn't have all of those skills to communicate at their level, or at least I didn't think I did. But do you know what? It was remarkably easy. You know, they made it very easy to communicate with them. They were very clear on what I needed to give, very clear on the support. We have got some amazing sort of top leaders who made this possible. So I don't know, it was a bit of a mixture, Rory, a bit scary, a bit difficult. Really good, having really good golden people around is massively important.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great to know that you had that support just immediately available to you when people realise that they're doing the right thing. And I think that's the big thing. It's about being purposeful and thinking of how the bank can help the community. And it's just the perfect example of people coming together at the right place at the right time to really do some good work. So that is fantastic hearing you say that.
Can I add something to what you're saying there, Rory?
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things that made it very easy for me to lean in very quickly is the open relationship that I did have with some of our senior leaders. I'd already built that yesterday. And so I think the important thing for me now is sort of a leader in the bank is, how am I allowing the people around me to be able to ask those brave questions when they want to ask? You know, am I being controlling? Am I stopping them asking? Am I making them afraid to do that? And so now I recognise how important it is, because that's the difference they made. They actually allowed to be confident enough to ask those questions. And so it is allowing me to question how I lead now.
Yeah, I can imagine. I imagine it was very empowering as well, being able to collaborate with people at that level, but knowing that actually they were just as passionate about getting things over the line as you were. So it's it's truly inspiring that things are able to come together with that. So we've discussed obviously where the ask came from and kind of resistance and kind of getting things landed. Let's talk a little bit about what actually happened and the amazing success story that then came out of this fantastic effort from yourself and the team around you and the senior execs that got on board. And because it was truly remarkable, and you then were able to deliver something that was fantastic. I mean, how does it make you feel? And tell us a little bit about what actually happened. And
so I think there was a lot of different things that we did that perhaps we've not done before. So the organisations that we worked with, so again, if I talk about Social Bite, overnight, all of their income had stopped, all their cafes had stopped, all their community events had stopped. And so these organisations not only were being asked to help more, they were also losing their income. And so some of the work we did, which probably isn't reported, is that we helped those businesses to support them in repurposing what they were doing at pace. And so some of it was things like we sourced packaging. So one of our teams sourced packaging, plastic. At the time it was plastic. Then we looked at what's sustainable, but we had a mass amount of meals going out every single day. So if you think 6,000 meals going out, there were a lot of actual individual activities that needed to happen with those organisations. We also looked at looking at their suppliers at that point, and could we renegotiate through our network cheaper products for them. So with one of those organisations, we reduced their running costs of their kitchens by 33%, just by putting some analysts on to have a look at where their supplies were coming from. But we did do different things. So I think we might have somebody from Queen Margaret's University on here, Sarah. And, you know, we went out and asked Queen Margaret's University, you've got some brilliant cookers that are much better than ours. Can we start cooking mass amount of food that we've been donated in your cookers? And the answer was yes. So we started experimenting, doing different things. You know, I never thought at the beginning of that year that we would be having truckloads of carrots and potatoes being dropped off at Gogarburn, and that we'd be cooking them. And actually, we're even feeding local horses that didn't have any, because that stables had lost all of their income. You know, they weren't running courses. They actually couldn't afford to feed their horses. So it wasn't just people that we were doing things. But I think some of the mass donations did shock me. You know, being around 250,000 items of brand new clothing. I didn't know how that would look, but it's a lot bigger than my sock drawer. You know, like it looked.
I can imagine.
And it was just like, oh my goodness, how much have we actually got here? And some of it also is still ongoing. Just before saying the ongoing bit, I think we realised there was lots of other problems. So we had a lot of children in Scotland that didn't have technology, and purchasing them technology was going to be a challenge. So we started looking at donations came in from book companies, but not just any old books. These were top sort of selling novels for children. And so again, we had massive supplies and building our networks of those going out through schools. So, you know, the network in which things were distributed, we once at one point got something like 60,000 pot noodles that Social Bike got donated, and they needed them because a lot of people were staying in hostels without anything other than a kettle. And for weeks, not just, you know, so that kind of food was really important. And those pot noodles were shifted in vans by Sky within a couple of hours and completely distributed. So it was phenomenal, the network and the people that made this work. And I know I couldn't name all of them because there was so many individuals that made that possible. So yeah, it shocked me, Rory. It shocked me that we were able to do what we did.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And that, yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it must have just been, yeah, amazing just seeing it all start to come together like that, but also the scope of it being, yeah, is much larger than you probably thought to. And it's great to hear you mention other companies that you're able to collaborate with, because I know that you've spoken to me before about this. It was most definitely a team effort, and I think it was a perfect example of just the amazing things that were going on up and down the country at the start of the pandemic. So you talked a little bit about kind of how we got there. I know that by then there was an awful lot of that, what you described to me offline as a kind of a fight or flight reaction to get yourself there and to get things landed. But I suppose I got to a point where it became business as usual, and you'd been going at 100 miles an hour for so long to get it up and running. And how were you able to respond when that happened? And what was that like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, so to begin with, I think we were all in that fight mode. What can we do? And working at 100 miles an hour. We're definitely what I would describe now as in warrior mode. You know, we were able for that fight. And we did think that fight would be over in the first lockdown and that we would stop. But actually, the second lockdown was much harder. Because one, a lot of easy donations had come in, and the impact on the economy was hitting. So people were reluctant to support in the same way they had. And quite frankly, organisations were just knackered. You know, they did not expect to be still going at it for that length of time. I think what kept us going was friendship. So we sort of developed a massive sense of curiosity, laughter. We accepted that decisions had to be made. Whoever was there would make them. And I haven't noticed that so well the agility in which we worked at. We were a very trusted team. Whoever was there made the best decision and choice, and we all got on with that. And if we had to mop up some of it afterwards, that's what we did. And I think that comrade softness or just our support of each other took us through the hard times. And then we had to rethink, because we couldn't keep doing what we were doing. We had to start to think a bit smarter and a bit more blue sky to work out, do we do the same again, or do we do something different? And so we did start to do approach things a little bit differently, a lot more collaboration with donations that were coming in. We got through it, but I think it had some wounds, which we all needed to recover from. So I think that's the challenge with something like this. Normally, if you're running a project or a program, you complete a bit and then there's a rest, and not always, but there is a little bit, and then you might start something again. But this didn't have those breaks, so it was a bit relentless.
Yeah.
But I think joy, companionship was definitely what got us through.
It was great to hear how resilient you and the team were, and that when that was happening. You spoke a lot about the kind of team and the overall efforts. What was that like for you? I imagine it was probably pretty full on for you, and obviously extremely worthwhile, but I imagine quite a stressful process to go through.
So yes and no. So I think this is where, when you are in your purpose, I've recently heard, I find this word uncomfortable, but zone of genius. Where you're in that zone, it doesn't feel as hard. It's not as difficult. You don't feel exhausted by it. It's much harder to do a job that you're not enjoying. It's much harder to do a job where you can't see the impact. So that part of it made it a little bit easier. Yeah, I mean, I'm a single parent, so, managing Gregor at home, and quite often a lot of the work might take place through social media at night time and at weekends. But I had a very supportive team where we recognised that I just needed to adjust my hours and I needed to take breaks when that suited me. And so that's what I did.
Yeah, that's good. And I imagine that came obviously against the backdrop of entire organisations like NatWest and beyond trying to be a lot more flexible regarding their colleagues. So that was probably the one thing you had going for you at that time regarding that. But yeah, it's truly inspiring just hearing how resilient you and the team were with getting that over the line and the difficulties you faced. But to move on from that then, Sheena, I suppose it was quite, I mean, I'm just total and utter awe at this story of yours. Did you, I know you were obviously heads down to try and get it over the line. At what stage were you able to really take a step back and just kind of think, wow, like, when was that kind of moment for you where you were able to just truly appreciate the scope and the success of what you'd worked hard to deliver?
So this is an interesting one for me, Rory, because this was probably my biggest masterclass in all of this, is that I consider myself as fairly, I was always quite successful. I ran successful pieces of work. I was capable at work, but actually feeling success is not something I was very good at. So I could do something amazing and walk past it. I could do something that I thought had impact, and I would be moving on to the next thing before I even acknowledged it. And actually, I'm just trying to think there. You obviously know I got nominated with a medal, and I actually felt a little bit down after that, which seems really ungrateful. But it was because I thought, well, what next? Is this it? What am I going to do? I've got a medal, so what next could I do? And I felt really down because and actually what changed that for me was something very peculiar. I actually, my coach recommended that I had it's somebody that reads your face, like a palmistry person, so that with a hand. And what she said to me was that there was a lot of nice things, but what she said to me was that I had all the hallmarks of somebody who was successful, but that I didn't know what success really meant. In that if I didn't find it, I would never find peace. And so that started a load of coaching for me, because I realized it was true. I actually, so I have since getting the medal had quite a lot of coaching and support, life coaching around this topic, because I was doing it again and again. I was being successful and moving past it. And the disadvantage for that is that I also moved the team I worked with past it too quickly. And so acknowledging it now, it's weird for me to sit in this, but I am actually sort of trying to recognize and slow down and appreciate that actually it was I made a difference, and hopefully some of this will influence other things to happen. And I may sit back and watch those. One of the big changes we had as an outcome, sustainable outcome out of this, was that our cafes across NatWest are now social enterprise. And I feel amazing that was part of the work that I did, and I love that. I wonder what other impacts they're going to, is going to be. And I want to see that. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
And I'm slowing down enough to be able to watch it now. But it's been a journey for me to accept things that I've achieved.
Yeah. It's brilliant though that you've managed to now take that step back, acknowledge it. If there was ever someone that was deserving a pat on the back for some good work and time to take the praise, it was you and the team for your efforts on this. Is utterly amazing. And I've noticed we've just to take a pause from our content, a few really nice comments coming through as you're talking there as well, Sheena. So just a reminder to everyone who's attending this evening, feel free to keep those comments going through. We'll have a look through them at the end, and we will be stopping for questions later on in the session. So feel free to get those questions in early. If anything that Sheena mentions jogs a question on you, or feel free to leave them towards the end and answer them through the Q&A function as well. It's great seeing those comments pop up and everyone in the audience being so engaged this evening. So we've talked there, Sheena, about the praise that you received in terms of how you managed it and how you were able to kind of appreciate the success yourself. But the success of it wasn't just noticed by you. The success went much, much further than that. And we then started to get into national media attention, media coverage, great coverage internally within NatWest, an organisation. But it went much, much further than that. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And I believe you also got a call from a senior exec as a surprise at one point. So I'd love if you can share the story with our audience this evening.
Yeah. So I think it tells you the kind of organisation we are, actually. So I thought I was presenting to one of our senior leaders a programme of work that I wanted to lead out the back of doing the food bank and what we'd learned, which was called the Skill Bank, which I am now leading, but I thought I was going to be presenting it. And so I turned up for my call, and the other person that was due to present with me wasn't on the call. Yeah, so I was busy trying to message him to say, Jonathan, where are you? And at the time, the person that I was meeting was Malcolm Buchanan. And so he started chatting to me as if he knew me. And like he was sort of saying, oh, Sheena, you live in East Calder. And, sort of he told me, oh, there's some brilliant pubs near where you stay. And I was thinking, what's happening here? This is a bit odd. And so again, I sort of flicked to have a look to see where's Jonathan on the Zoom call. And I realised it was Alison Rose. That was on the call. There wasn't a click to say she joined. So it was utterly surprising. So it was a complete hijack. It was a planned hijack of me. And it was really queen-like. She was, so utterly in praise of me, of what I had done and how I galvanised the support of our colleagues to operate in a different way, and that she had nominated me for the British Empire Medal. But I just love the fun that she, that she brought, sort of I don't think there's too many people, chief executives, which would set up a hijack call, but and film it and then send it out. So yeah, that was lovely. It's really nice. It was just a different way of doing things. But the other bit as well, Rory, which was also quite funny, was that it was one night I was I was checking my phone late at night, and I saw this message in my email, and it said it was from the House of Commons, yeah. And I thought, God, I've had a few of those recently, but I've ignored it because I thought it was spam. And so I opened it, and it said, "Dear Sheena, we've been trying to get hold of you for weeks now, and if, you need to reply by 6 o'clock tonight." And it was 8 o'clock. Otherwise, we will not be able to accept you for a British Empire Medal. And I was thinking, oh my God, is this real? And so I thought, I was very shaky, but I rang the number and said, hi. And the person said, hi, Sheena, it's Alex. Yes, it's brilliant to hear that you want to take the award. So I still really wasn't very convinced. So I shared the email with my sister and said, what do you think? Do you think this is real? And we determined it was. But just to bring me back to life with a bump, I ran upstairs to tell my son, Gregor, I've got this medal. I might be going to the garden party. Gregor's 11. And he said, Mum, can you just wait? I'm playing a game on Minecraft, so I need to finish it. Yeah, okay. But yeah, it's just what's important to some people just isn't. But so the garden party is back on. I haven't had a medal physically yet, but it's on in June. So I'm really excited that hopefully I'll be able to take my mum. So my mum is in her 80s, and health is not brilliant for her at the moment. And so I hope that she will be able to come along and really enjoy it. And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Not so much for me, but really for her. I'd love her to be able to just have that moment, even if there's only a couple of minutes of it. I think she's going to drive me insane taking her. But at the same time, if it's just for those few moments, I want her to have that.
Yeah, that's a once in a lifetime experience, and well deserving for you. And I imagine your mum must be incredibly proud as well, and we'll be really looking forward to that. So, fantastic to hear the garden party is back on, and you'll be finally getting your medal after the wait that's been caused by the pandemic. But that's just amazing. And just to finish up on what we spoke about there about kind of attention and media and things, I know that a few things I saw going around internally, and it said that the media coverage for the bank, and as much as this wasn't what this was all about, they said it was almost, was it £23 million of brand exposure that you would usually have to pay for due to marketing things for the organisation, but actually just the exposure that you got through the media for your inspiring story was actually was amazing for the organisation as well. As much as that's not what the goal is, what you were doing here, it really brings to life just the scale of the media attention that this got. Yeah.
Being kind pays.
Yeah. No, fantastic. So I wonder if you don't mind, Sheena, I know that when you spoke at an internal event, which kind of led us on to this conversation, we spoke about the media and obviously the benefits that came out of that, but there was a bit of negative media attention that you got as well, as ever when you put yourself in the spotlight, that I imagine you really weren't prepared for, bearing in mind that you just had really pushed on this in 24 hours notice, as you discussed earlier on in the call. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that and what it was like for yourself and how you're able to deal with that situation?
Yeah, so I think the bit that was the most difficult actually was I was due to present something at work, and an article had just come out. It was an interview that had been done for the Daily Mail, and there was some photos that had been used of me. There was some reference to Fred, and sort of, in the sense that we were moving away from our past and sort of and some of the history within the bank. But actually it led to some really critical comments about me, which I didn't really know how to respond to. So the comments were that, you know, that I was overweight, that maybe I was eating the food that we were having at the food bank, that it was a rubbish medal, and it was hard because, you know, just even from a body image perspective, I wasn't what I would want it to be. You know, your image of how fit and how much exercise you're going to do and all the healthy things you're going to eat, I wasn't quite at my body image that I wanted to be. So it felt like there was truth in it. And so I did talk about that to colleagues, and in the event that I was due to present at, mainly because I was moved instantly before the call and I couldn't not mention it. But actually what it led to is a number of colleagues calling me and messaging me and saying that, you know, they wanted to thank me for sharing how I felt and what it made me feel, and that they had some feelings themselves about the way they looked and how they came across. I had a colleague that told me they never put their Zoom call on because they didn't look like how they looked, and I didn't know that. I hadn't actually noticed that about them joining the call before, but the fact that that's what they were hiding behind made me feel that I needed to be a better colleague. And I loved the fact it brought connections that I wasn't expecting. And so it was hard, and I did have to sort of work out how I felt about myself. But I almost felt that happening was for a reason. It was for a reason for other people to reach out and to tell me how they were feeling too. So I'm glad it happened now. So yeah. Not easy. I don't know how lots of people in the press regularly cope with those kind of comments, but now I realise it's a story. It was their story about me, and I was creating a story about myself and how I thought about myself, and that wasn't okay for me. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Sheena. I know it's difficult to you're just a regular person trying to make a difference and making a difference at that, and yet you get that negative attention that comes with being in the spotlight. And just want to say on behalf of everyone here that's on the call this evening, I'm so sorry you went through that, but massive well done again for your personal resilience to get through that and continue on with your great efforts, because continue on you did, and I know that we moved, you mentioned earlier on the skill bank and where things are going to now, but actually it really hasn't stopped at the food bank, has it? And do you mind telling us a little bit about where things are now and how it's moving further forward?
So yeah, I'm really pleased that we've got the opportunity to run the skill bank, and the skill bank is all about helping communities and our businesses to access our network, our skills, and our resources to help them to thrive. And it's really exciting. You know, we get to work with some amazing organisations, small businesses. I think I've noticed on one of the comments that Bailey, who runs Decami, is on the call. And, you know, I've loved working, you know, our team have loved working with Bailey. She inspires Black ethnic minority entrepreneurs to rise, women to rise. And we have some input into supporting that business to grow. And that's such an honour. You know, it's such an honour because, you know, they bring so much light and they do so many amazing things. And I love we get the chance to do that through applying our skills and our resources to see how we can help. And I think, you know, more recently, one of the pieces of work we're now involved in is how can we apply our skills and our resources and our networks to what's happening, the humanitarian problem that's happening in Ukraine. And so I'm really pleased that the Skill Bank is actively working with charities on the ground here in Edinburgh and across the UK. So recently with the Association for Ukrainians in Great Britain in Edinburgh, we've helped them source a warehouse All their donations are starting to go to that warehouse. We're helping them to look at the volunteer management, the support of volunteers, and broader, what's their comms, how can they communicate more clearly with the public about the types of donations that they need. And so all of this is about applying our skills and applying our resources. And actually some of it's not hard. At the moment, those organisations are completely overwhelmed. They're completely sort of unprecedented sort of demands on them. And literally we are putting a warm hug around them to say, you're not alone, let's work it out together. One of my team's on the call here, Callie, and Callie will know that this week it's been so noisy in some of those meetings because they're so frantic trying to do amazing things. And actually what we're trying to do is look at the patterns, look at the support and see what can we do that will make an impact and slow things down for them so that they can operate. So that's what Skill Bank's all about, and I get the absolute pleasure of being able to lead that. So delighted that we can do things like that.
Oh, that's fantastic. And again, it's great to see that you're on the forefront of really making a difference. And I've used the word resilient so many times, but again, in the face of difficulties in the humanitarian issue in Ukraine just now with the conflict, it's fantastic to see you've been able to pivot into that and use the skills and what you've set up to really help that. So that's absolutely fantastic, Sheena. So I've noticed we've had a question come through, but we'll get to that shortly. So we're getting the kind of business end of talking through your story, Sheena. But before we stop for questions, I know there's a couple of other things I wanted just to mention. So if you don't mind indulging us briefly, we've spoken a lot about resilience in terms of everything that's happened and some of the personal resilience you had to go through. I know that you now have had some discussions about this, that you have been off work a little bit recently through illness. But there's also another really positive thing regarding a book that's coming out soon. So do you mind just giving us a little bit of a talk through in terms of what you've went through recently, and again, how you've had to show personal resilience, and then you can finish on that positive note of the book.
Yeah. So I wanted to have a bill of health in October, and so I took an extra benefit at work to have some screening just to check that I was all good. Anyway, it turns out I wasn't all good. Although I couldn't feel anything, see anything, and didn't know I had any problems, it turns out that I had breast cancer. And it was a massive shock. I really didn't expect it. And for a period of time until I knew what was going to happen, it was really, really horrible. And especially, as I mentioned, I'm a single parent, so the worry of what that could mean. And so it did teach me a lot more then that there are some really important people in my life that carried me through that process. It wasn't going to be about how tough I was, how I fought. It wasn't any of those things. I had to just lean into it. I had to just accept what's going to happen today. What are they going to tell me this week? And I couldn't look too far in the future. My life coach gave me a wording which was you could choose the low road or the high road, and the low road is going to hurt yourself and everybody around you. And so I chose the high road, and what I did in that was that I chose to try and see all the positives of what was happening, and to build people around me that could shine light in when I couldn't see it. So I've got one friend that we have a little image that we send each other on WhatsApp, and that image alerts her immediately to, I've got a crazy mind, I just need you to talk to me. I don't have to explain what it is, but that's her role. And so suddenly I've developed an army of people around me that knew what their role was, because suddenly I could ask, and that's something I've learned, is asking for help. Really, that's been great. And just out of the back of that, then this is a shameless plug, is that I got the opportunity with some amazing women that I know to write a book together. So there's 33 chapters in it, and we have each written a chapter, and those chapters are about things like this, our ordinary lives, that we have insight, that we've got insight to share, wisdom to share, all of us have had different experiences that have shaped us, that have made us, that we want to celebrate. So all the book is completely, all the donations are to female charities, but it's been amazing writing it. It's been scary people reading it, and a bit of vulnerability, because it does disclose some personal things about me, and likewise with other women on this writing this book. But it's been a pleasure to be involved in it, and this is part again of my healing, my journey, my learning, my networking, just, you know, keeping learning, you know. So here it is. You can buy it on Amazon.
Fantastic, that's great. And I saw that Heather's just put the link in there as well to the book, so yeah, feel free to do that, and I'll be ordering myself a copy as well. And it's not a shameless plug at all, Sheena. We thank you very much for your time this evening, especially on International Women's Day. It's a fitting end to the main bulk of our conversation to plug your book, so very much looking forward to getting a read of that. So we've nicely got up to about the 45-46 minute mark talking through that. Sheena, thank you so much for talking us through that incredible story. I've been seeing the comments come through, but I've been listening and not be able to follow them all, but it seems that our audience are really enjoying the event this evening as well. So thanks everyone for your active participation. We'll now move on to the section of the call for a Q&A for the final 15 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them via the Q&A function on Zoom, and I will read them out. And I'll just quickly have a look here. So we have our first question is from Sian. So it says, thanks Sheena for telling your story so eloquently and bravely. All this work is so high paced and can be really high energy. What do you do to ground yourself and take some time out of work and helping others?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My phone is propped up on some of the things that I do, so I'm just going to change my visual at the moment and show the stuff that I do every day. So, you know, every day I read one of these. There's a page for each day. I've got such a rubbish memory that I could reuse this book for years. But it encourages me to just take a different perspective each day. And one of the other things that I do is that I've got a journal, and in that journal I sort of talk about what's my mindset for today. And I've had to really lean into it recently. There's been a lot of things coming back to work after being off with cancer and trying to work out who I am, what I'm about. I still use that every day. I've got a little running group twice a week with some friends from Essex, and that's really important to me. And actually, I mentioned at the beginning, remarkable women. I'm part of a group of sort of women, and it's just amazing. It's just such a supportive group. So I think that's, you know, those are the kind of things that I do regularly that help to ground me. Yeah.
Fab, thanks, Sheena. I'm just having a look through here. We have another question, but just looking through some of the comments, it's fantastic seeing some of the comments we've been getting, and people saying your medal is so well deserved, Sheena, and your honesty is inspiring, and thanks for sharing. And Nikki says you're a regular person who's given and inspired so much. So yeah, it's fantastic to see these comments coming through. So thank you so much everyone for your participation in that. And we do have a couple more questions coming through, so I'll just have a look. Oh, and it's another one from Sian actually as well. So Sian's just asked, how would you recommend choosing a coach? And while Sheena's answering that, everyone else feel free to ask another question. I'll read it out next. Yeah, that's difficult, isn't it? I can answer that. I was wondering how I would answer that, but now I know I've picked a really good coach. And do you know how I picked that coach? Because I saw somebody and I thought, wow, you're so different. You seem amazing. What is different? And she said, I've got this amazing coach. And so I've got that coach. So I noticed behavioural difference. I noticed their energy difference, the way they looked. And actually my coach, one of the first questions she asked me was, what do you not want to tell me? And I found that a really challenging question. But actually there was something in there that was the gold dust of actually what I needed to develop and learn.
yeah, I think look at people, and if there's somebody that you think, I really like the way they behave or how they're coming across and promoting themselves in the world, ask them who their coach is. That would be my advice, I think.
Fab, thanks, Sheena. Pam has just asked a question there as well, Sheena, just saying, so what is your biggest learning from this experience, would you say?
That's a good question. What's my biggest learning? So it's something I'm still working through myself, actually, which is that I got a really limiting belief that I can do everything myself. Now that served me well, you know, sometimes because I have had to do a lot myself. But actually having that belief means that I don't ask for help when I need to. And I try to have broader shoulders than I have. And people want to help when they're asked. So I'm learning to do that. So I think it's an ongoing learning for me. But I think trying to recognise I don't need to do everything myself is definitely something that's an ongoing learning.
Yeah, I can imagine. And actually that leads us well into our next question. We've got Sheena, so it's from Sarah Batt, who I know that you and I both know from our business area at work. But Sarah's saying, wonderful conversation to learn from, and thank you so much. But Sarah's asking, was there ever a time when you wanted someone else to take the wheel? And if so, how did you reach out for that support? So I know you kind of touched on that slightly with your last answer, but what's your thoughts on that one? That's okay. We're 2 years into Zoom calls now, Sheena, so yeah.
Apologise for the barking.
No, you're fine.
Right, sorry, I just had to throw a treat there. I'm home alone.
I'm just having a quick look to see what else we came through while we wait for the barking to stop. Jean's put a good comment in the chat, Sheena, to say that your coach is now going to have a very long waiting list after your application this evening. So yeah.
Guys, I'm so embarrassed to say this, but you'll hear my door is going constantly, and I'm going to have to open that. This is the joys of being a single parent and working. Despite all my preparation, it's not quite worked to plan.
No worries, Sheena. Take a second and I'll prep the next question that comes through for you. Thanks everyone for your patience. It's, as ever with Zoom calls, we have the excitement of home working. She answered, yeah, that's real life. It is indeed. So thanks for your question as well, Callie. I'll take it off. We've got a question from Naomi too, so we'll take Naomi and Callie's question next. As ever, feel free to enter your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A function.
Yeah, sorry. I think that's the point there, is that sometimes it's not easy, is it? You know, like there are times I want to pass on things, just like now, where actually, you know, the requirement was to be there. And actually that was my error. I'd locked the door. My son had come back from football super cold and wanted in. So, yeah, I think there were times I wanted to pass the reins on, and sometimes I didn't really want to do it any longer. And I think for me, I had, again, a different coach that helped me with some of that, which was my boss. And sometimes what he would do is push me forward and say, no, you can do this. And other times it would be almost like you'd hold my hand. Okay, let's do this together. And I think sometimes when I got overwhelmed, the problem seemed too massive. But actually being held for a little while, we could break it back down again. So sometimes it wasn't that I needed to pass it on. I just needed somebody to walk with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good to know. And again, it comes back to the points you were raising earlier on about how collaboration is really key in getting these things over the line. We've had a question in the chat from Naomi. How do you choose your counsel around you?
Gosh, that's a really good one as well. So sometimes it's really hard, isn't it? Because you want people to agree with you, and sometimes they don't. And that can be hard. And I've, sometimes I haven't prepared, when I've done something, I haven't prepared for how people are going to feel and what their response is going to be. So it's a lot easier for me to choose counsel if I enter it with a much more open mind that I'm going to need their help and that I'm going to be curious and see where I can make improvements. Where it catches me out is when I've done something and I haven't thought about it properly beforehand. And I'm a bit scared and I want my counsel to just validate me and approve what I'm doing. Sometimes it's good when they don't, because when they don't, there's gold dust there, isn't there? Because you can either get annoyed about it, triggered by it, upset by it, angry by it, but in all of that there is an observation. Why do I feel this way? How do you choose them though? How do you choose them? Don't know. I think it is just, sometimes you don't choose them, they just attract to you. I've got some people that I didn't know they were there until they stepped forward, and now I'm so grateful they're in my life. So I think the more I'm putting myself out there, I am attracting people, more of the people I want to have there. So I'm finding that quite fun.
Fab. We've had a couple more coming there as well. A comment from Helen saying, "What an amazing inspiration. Thanks for sharing your story." A question from our own Callie Smith that you mentioned earlier on. So Callie's asking, who do you look up to for inspiration?
So my biggest inspiration, despite, the drama that was just caused there, because I locked the door and he came in and stamped and told me how unfair it was and that it was cold and wet, and how he didn't want to go to his room whilst I finished this call. My biggest inspiration is him, really, because that's my why. That's my why. And even as I say that, I get a bit emotional, because I want to be a better person. I want to be an example that he would like to see, and I want to leave some kind of, I want him to grow up seeing some of the things that I think that we need to fight for, that we need to do things different for. So I don't have a long list of sort of massively, female inspirations. I think my driver is probably Gregor. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's a far more honest answer than you'd usually get asking that as well, Sheena. So thanks so much for sharing. And you're right, I can most definitely tell that you're driven by that. So thanks for sharing. Just looking here, we've got a question from Nora as well. So where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Oh, so Nora, there's not many Noras. So this is my sister. So
okay.
I'm really proud that my sister's joined, because I've not really shared some of the stuff that I do in the past. So the fact that she's here, thank you. I don't know. I see myself retired, definitely. I guess there is, I want to find that peace that I talked about, that, sort of a bit more calmness than I sometimes have. That's definitely an aspiration of where I would like to be in 5-10 years' time, is just that feeling. I want to feel like I'm home, that I'm completely comfortable with who I am and where I am, with regardless of what I've got. I do feel I'm lucky in some ways. I have got some financial sort of stability around me, so I'm not massively looking for that now. That isn't to say I wouldn't be grateful of extra pounds, but I feel grateful and lucky that I'm sort of on a stability point. So yeah, I'd like to, like you'll know if you read my book, that I've been divorced, so a nice relationship sis would be quite a nice extra. So yeah, I think it's karma. It's karma. You know, I think there's things that I still want to do in the world and things I want to help with, and maybe, you know, stories I want to tell, but it's definitely around finding that peace that I can share and connect with people on.
Brilliant. Great answer, Sheena. And as ever throughout the entire evening, you've given nuggets of wisdom along the way, and that final answer was just as high standard as the rest of it. So that's us now reached 7:15. Thank you everyone for your anticipation coming on this evening. Sheena, thank you so much for spending the evening with us. The comment from Nora there saying, "Well done, sis, so proud of you." And as one of your colleagues at work again, we are massively proud of you as well. So thank you so much for sharing the story. It's truly inspiring. As I said, there's been nuggets of wisdom throughout, and this tale of your resilience has been excellent. The one takeaway for me will be that quote that you mentioned at the start about, if it's not me, then who, and not now, then when. And I think we can all learn an awful lot from that mantra. So thank you so much for sharing. For those of you who have just came along to the event this evening, then feel free to give the Chartered Banker page a follow on LinkedIn, and you'll see any upcoming events. I'll just finish by saying again, thank you, Sheena, so much for your time this evening, and good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.